for the good people on YouTube. Hey there, students. Tom Richey here with the Empty Mug, and we are going to get started with some APUSH review. Now, if you are watching on YouTube, welcome, okay? We love you and all of that kind of stuff, but there is a link in the description to go to Crowdcast, which is the chat that I monitor a little bit more closely. So as far as that goes, if you want a front row seat, the Crowdcast interface, crowdcast.io/Tom Richey, and get you into this chat that we're monitoring a bit more. All right, Andrew, it is my pleasure. Hey, Sophia and Norma, or Nora, sorry about that, and Angie. Maybe there's a Norma somewhere in here. So this review is going to focus on colonial America, basically that period. You know, a lot of times APUSH will call it Unit 2, 1607 to 1754. Okay, so that's what we're primarily going to be focusing on here. And so with that, and it looks like Vanessa missed Nico. Now, those of you who are watching here on Crowdcast, okay, so we've got a Q&A, and we want to note here that y'all are able to ask questions, and you're able to upvote questions, okay? So you can go in there, you can ask the question, you can upvote questions. As far as that goes, somebody's got a question about the Civil War. The senator, okay, that looks like a joke. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll just go ahead and delete that one. So with that, though, but if you want to ask a serious question, now let me note here, the topic today is colonial America. So those questions are going to get first priority. If the question is colonial America, it's going to get first priority. But if there are no questions remaining at some point about colonial America and we go into some other things, that is totally fine there as well. So just understand that y'all can ask questions. That is totally fine. And so managing moderators, just looking at the YouTube chat for just a second. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, how to manage your time in studying for the test, okay? Now, you don't have time to study. Now, here's the thing. If you've got a question about studying in general, we can act, because studying is part of this. The main thing is, remember, it's not that you don't have time. It's that, now, you may be busy. I'm busy, okay? I could very easily say that I don't have time to be running this review right now because I've got my day job, tutoring, family obligations and stuff like that. Vicky and Raul are here grading some papers and multitasking and doing that kind of thing. So the first thing to do is to conclude that you actually do have time. It's just a matter of how much time that you are willing to allot to studying for APUSH. Okay, so that's really the question here. And one thing that I would say is that even if we're talking about 20 minutes a day, okay, let's think about this. Could you do 20 minutes a day 4 days a week? And that would be an hour and 20 minutes. Okay, so you've got 4 days a week, 20 minutes. And so that's an hour and 20 minutes a week. That's going to be so much better than doing nothing. Okay, and we're talking about here, if your phone's nearby, put it somewhere else. Okay, maybe sit at the kitchen table or somewhere where other people are that can make sure that you're not going to be just messing around, and open up your book and actually like go through it, kind of do some active reading. Go to Quizlet. Quizlet works very well for some people. Also, ladies and gentlemen, time for a word from our sponsor. All right, let's go ahead and let me go ahead and share the screen here. And we want to go ahead and make sure y'all know about Romulus APUSH Review, which is available at the App Store and Google Play. Now, this is just a simple little trivia app. Like if you're saying that you don't have enough time to, enough time to study. Well, the thing is, if you are, don't do this while you're driving, but if you are a passenger in a vehicle, if you are waiting in line, if you are, you get to class a little early, you can go in here and you can pick any topic you want in U.S. history, and it'll ask you a little trivia questions, okay? Which, one thing, some people complain that this isn't a stimulus-based app. They don't really get the point. Where this is going to help you more than anything is on your SAQs, LEQ, DBQ, when you're having to come up with specific evidence. So this is just $2.99 at the App Store or on Google Play if you're into that sort of thing. And so with that, Romulus APUSH review, that is one of our sponsors. Also, and that's actually my app. I designed this app, so it's not like somebody just came in and sponsored. This is actually my app. I was the one who made this several years ago. Now, also, if you're in the Virginia Beach area, I am doing a live APUS history review. That is going to be at Bayside High School. Information is on my website. That's 15 advance, 20 at the door, but I'm going to be at Bayside from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. and I'm going to be running a live review on Saturday. So with that, let's go ahead and take a thing on here. Now, as far as that goes, Unit 2 is not a behemoth exactly on this exam, but just note that Units 1 and 2, like this time from like so-called 1491 to 1754, that it doesn't make, now together they make up something. I mean, together they make up more than 10% of the exam, I believe here. So as far as that goes, let's see, APUSH course and exam description. Let me make sure I am giving you the right thing here. So I would say that now the post 1980 stuff, that is supposed to be less than 5% of the exam, like 5% or less. And I don't think that we're ever going to see something that is exclusively post 1980 in any of the free response. But yeah, they say that, that basically what you're looking at is that this could be anywhere between like 10 and 14% of the exam when we think about Unit 1 and 2, like the time before the French and Indian War. And why is it important? Because sometimes there have been LEQs that are from this time period, and especially SAQs as well. SAQ 3 is very commonly from this early period. So with that, we don't want to try to think, oh, well, that's not a major thing. Excuse me, a major thing. I don't need to look at that. Now, as far as that, but yeah, I'm not going to say that this is a behemoth necessarily on the test, but at the same time, this is something that, we want to make sure that, we do have. Now, how do I mark a question as, oh, you know what, I say start answering. That's right. Okay, so as far as that goes, yeah, and it looks like it actually comes up on the screen while I'm answering it. Great. I'm still working with this Crowdcast 2.0, but it's got some cool stuff here. So as far as that goes, it will be, especially that first LEQ, what they call the question 2, because remember the DBQ is number 1 and then LEQs are 2, 3, and 4. So where you're most likely to see this, aside from the multiple choice, now it will not be on the DBQ. It will not be one of the first 2 SAQs, but it is eligible for SAQ 3 and then that first LEQ that's going to focus on the first third of the course. So that's something that we want to think about there. So with that, let's go ahead and think about what are some things that we might come across there. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and just do a little review here of the European colonizers. So the first thing that I think is very important about this period is looking at the different European colonizers, the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and the English. So first of all, let's think in terms of having this, having this map in your head. Okay, so this is something that I think is important, just kind of having a mental map of knowing where in general everyone is. So the Spanish are in the American Southwest, they're in Florida, and of course they are all over Latin America. The French are in Canada, the Great Lakes, and what they then called Louisiana. Okay, so this is something you see: upper Louisiana, lower Louisiana. Now, of course, not that the French put a lot of people there, but you see the French have a lot of forts and trading posts. So, and then the British, of course, they have got here the 13 colonies, the eastern seaboard here. And then there are some areas where Britain has gotten some land from France in the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713. If any of y'all took AP Euro, that's the last of Louis XIV's wars. So we see here that that's going to be the subject of the French and Indian War, that New France is not going to be there anymore. Okay. So a few things about the Spanish, Ferdinand and Isabella, God, glory, and gold, the so-called Catholic monarchs, the conquistadors, these conquerors that come in. Now, we want to note here, it's very important to bear in mind that the European colonizers didn't all act the same. They didn't all have the same relationship with American Indians that they came into contact with. That a lot of times these relationships were friendly and equal. Now, with the Spanish, though, the Spanish, it's typically going to be hierarchical, that they will come in, they will conquer the Aztec Empire, and then they will create something of a system there. Now, the course and exam description does mention a caste system that categorizes different interracial families. Now, as far as that goes, the caste system, we want to be careful because typically when we hear caste, we're thinking, for example, the Hindu Indian caste system that existed on the Indian subcontinent, that these castes are hierarchical. Historians dispute the extent to which, now, of course, there's always a historiographical debate. This would be a great thing for that SAQ1 where you've got those two dueling historians. And so with that, we want to consider that historians will debate that, but it wasn't strange for we see here a Spanish colonist and his mestiza wife. Basically, his wife is basically part native and part Spanish, and they have a child. So with the Spanish and the French, it definitely was not unheard of to have a mixed race marriage. Now, of course, with the British, that's not going to be so much of a thing. That occasionally, you do have something happen, but most of the time, the British are bringing plenty of women along with them. You've got young men, young women coming over. You've got families coming to New England. So we want to understand things like this, to where in the Spanish colonies, it was definitely somewhat common to marry someone of another racial or ethnic background. Now, the encomienda, also important. This was a system of labor and tribute. And so the Spanish conquerors at first, they basically get their land and then they're told, okay, these Indians will be there to work the land, kind of like feudalism in a way. But it's not that the individual Indians are enslaved, but they are, they are in a situation where they are expected as a group to perform a certain amount of labor, whether that be in the fields or in the mines. Okay, now Bartolome de las Casas, a Dominican priest who complained about the abuses of the Spanish encomienda system, and this was eventually abolished. Okay, so we want to note that the Spanish were Catholic. They made very intentional efforts to convert natives to Catholicism. Now, one thing I want to keep in mind, that when we're comparing European colonizers, sure, there are British missionaries, there are there are Dutch missionaries, but the Spanish and the French, they both have organized programs of evangelism. That Christian evangelism, and specifically Catholic evangelism, is a very, very core part of the mission. Okay, and so with that, we can see that going on there. And basically, I've got this video on YouTube if you want something that's a little more drawn out there. So with that, let me also see here that do I have I want to make sure, do I have a place to attach like files and stuff here? Let's see. So I'm looking for, let's see, people, backstage chat. Trying to figure out if I've got a place, but you know what? I can probably, put it in there somewhere, but I think there is a place. Let's see, share. Okay, share event. But anyway, I will figure that out for the next broadcast. Okay, so studio, let's see. Okay, so studio. Okay, that is where. So what I'm going to do here is slides and documents. Okay, so we've got here that I can Add here, PDF files. Okay, got it, got it, got it. And so let me go ahead and put a file as well that I think would be helpful here. This is something that I created for Marco Learning a while back. And let me just go ahead and put that in there. Let's see, study guides. And I'm going to go ahead and put here, this is the Spanish colonial system. Okay, so I think this is something I'm going to go ahead and upload that. And let's see what we've got here. So that should be, I'm going to go ahead and show that. Let's see. So that is showing. There should be a way that you can download this. And if not, let me know. I'm playing around with some of the things that we've got here. But this is something that I think, let's see, so I'm able to show, oh, wow, okay, all kinds of stuff here. All right, so we're going to remove that from the stage. But anyway, the stage is empty. Okay, so I want to come back in here. Let's see, we want to solo. All right, I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. So let's see if that's something that y'all are able to download. And if it's not, I'll look at some other options for making sure that we're able to get that to you. Okay. So with that, let's go back into the chat. We got some more people here. Let's see what we've got. Hello. Let's see, Titan. And how do we download that? I'm not exact. Okay. So we'll see about that, but I can, let me go ahead. Yeah. Is there one on the Marco Learning website? Let's see. Okay, let me see if that is, that's there. Okay, it looks like that is actually, let's see. No, I don't think I'm seeing it. But anyway, I will find a way to get that to you, even if I end up getting that into doing that as an email later. Okay, so can I do a shout out to Miss Melcher's AP class? I sure can. Okay, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, and Simon, and ladies and gentlemen, I'll also occasionally be doing Instagram shout outs. So at Tom Richey on Instagram, I will occasionally go and and do some shout outs for new followers. So at Tom Richey on Instagram, I will occasionally go in and I'll occasionally shout out to some of the new followers. All right. So going from there, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the French. Okay. So we want to go into New France here, and let's go into just some main things that we would kind of take in from the French. So we're going to go ahead and share the screen again and get this going. All right. So New France, we've looked at New Spain. And again, I've got YouTube lectures. I've got, proper YouTube lectures on YouTube. So with that, I'm giving you the abbreviated version. Now note the French, they had large territorial claims, but the area of settlement, the French had very, very small areas of settlement. So again, a lot of territorial claims, small areas of settlement, only a few colonists. The French were friendly and the French were few. So if y'all want some F words to remember the French, they were friendly and they were few. Okay. And also the furs, friendly, few, furs. French, friendly, few, furs. Okay. So you got just a whole string of F words to remember the French. French, friendly, few, furs. Okay. So we want to note there it's the fur trade. Now, while the Spanish were trying to build an empire, the French were really just building an economic empire, if you will. They're all trying to make money. Basically, all of these European colonists are trying to make money, but the French are making money through exchanges. They're not trying to conquer the Indians that they come into contact with. They are trying to trade. So the Indians have furs and the French are going to trade with them. So we see here is a painting that is a, kind of a typical French settlement, the Palisades and all of that. You've got you've got a walled fort, and there you go. Now, the French also would build alliances with local Indians, such as Samuel de Champlain. We'll look at that in a multiple choice set in a little bit. Now, fur traders descending the Missouri. Here's an 1845 painting. And note here that this is a French trader on the Mississippi River, a French fur trader with his son. Now, 1845, this was a very, a very tumultuous time in American history. The original title here, notice that there's the French trader, and you can see that his son is part Indian. Now, the original title was French Trader and Half-Breed Son, but the people who exhibited the painting thought that that would aggravate people's race fears and that sort of thing. Because again, the English colonists, this wasn't a thing that somebody did, or typically if they did, they would go and they would become part of the Indian tribe. Like very, very rarely, almost unheard of for an English colonist or a British colonist, whatever we want to call them, to bring an Indian wife and live with her in the colony. But again, with French fur traders, this was something that gave them an advantage. By intermarrying with Indian women, they were able to gain access to furs. And so from there, we can see that this was very common, of course, with the French and with the Spanish. And also, we want to note the French Jesuit priests who are spreading the gospel there. You see Father Marquette, who is out there spreading the gospel to the Indians. Now, one thing that we want to note here is while the Spanish were going to set up the mission, say you come to us, you learn Spanish, we're going to make you convert. The French Jesuits, they would go and they would live among the Indians, and they would learn the native languages. So, with that, again, this relationship is not hierarchical. We want to make sure that we understand that the European colonists and the Indians, at times they didn't get along. At times, the European colonists didn't get along with each other. At times, the Indians don't get along with each other. So let's just avoid trying to put anything into a box as if this describes the relationship between European colonizers and Native Americans, because there's no one formula. So we want to understand that the French were friendly, few, they wanted furs, and they tended to have a very good relationship with the Indians, which explains why during the French and Indian War, most of the Indian tribes sided with the French. Not only that they believed it was a strategic advantage, they liked them better as well. So with that, that's the Spanish and the French. And we want to remember that both the Spanish and the French, they had organized programs of evangelism, okay? And so as far as that, thank you, Misael, for making sure that Sophia Solis Estrella is paying attention, okay? Big Wes, I tell you what, I am always glad to shout out to Big Wes. It is always good to hear Big Wes's class. Now, near the end, Jeremiah, you ask a great question. I will make sure to get into the first Great Awakening, okay? We'll make sure to go into that before the end of the session. Why did salutary neglect end after the 7 Years' War? Isaiah, that's a little bit out of period, okay? Now, do multiple choice questions go in chronological order on the test? Now, let me note this. I would not count on it. I have seen practice tests where they are in order, but more often than not, what I see is they just kind of like, it's a total roller coaster. Don't expect anything to happen. My best advice here is to not expect it to be in order, out of order. Every single stimulus set that you get, it is different, and just put on your game face and tackle it, whether they're in chronological order or not. Now, the documents in the DBQ will always be in chronological order. The prompts for the LEQ will always be in chronological order. And the first one will come from the first third, second one will come from the second third, and the third one will come from, basically the 20th century. What you've got is the first LEQ prompt is going to be pre-1800. The second one's going to be in the 1800s, and the third one is going to be in the 20th century, typically. That's what we're going to see here. So with that, that's going to be going on there, okay? So going from there, don't expect the questions to be in chronological order. So with that, let's go ahead and the Dutch. Okay, so when we talk about the Dutch, if any of y'all speak Dutch, I love the language, by the way. Goedenavond. Goedenavond. That's basically like a good evening, I'm telling y'all in Dutch. And now the Dutch are in some ways like, economically, they're like the French. So it's important that we're forming comparisons. So the French and the Spanish, they are both Catholic and they both have organized programs of evangelism. Okay, so that's something that is important here, organized programs of evangelism. So going with that, thank you, Connor, on the YouTube side that we've got French, friendly, few, furs, forts. We got like 5 F words there with French. So excellent. So going from there, the Dutch, economically, they're like the French, fur trading largely. Whereas the French and the Spanish, they are alike in the case of their Catholic religion, of their love for spreading the gospel, but from there, they differ. Okay. And then when we get to the English, okay, what we want to note here is when we look at the English, the biggest difference with the English is they have they have a lot more people, for example. Okay, so the English, you've got a lot of people, and then they're basically existing in self-sustaining communities. Now, they starve for a little while right at first, but the English colonists, where you think about the regions colonized, the Atlantic coast and Canada. And by the way, this is a flag of England, which you typically today just see it at a soccer match or football, I believe, as they call it. But this is like the flag of England, which was at the time in 1607, it was still an actual country, which today, of course, this is part of the flag of the UK. Now, the English and the Dutch are both Protestant, okay? And now I don't think this has to do with them being Catholic or Protestant, but the English and the Dutch, they're both Protestant, and neither one of them have organized programs of evangelism. Again, that's not to say they're not missionaries, but they don't have organized programs of government-sponsored Christian evangelism as a point of colonization. So settlers and religious dissidents, okay, that's one thing that we want to note, especially in New England. Now, with the colonies, we have to think about the colonial regions as well. So we want to think about French, Spanish, Dutch, and the British, but also the New England colonies, the middle colonies, the southern colonies. So the primary economic activity that the English are doing a lot more agriculture. They have towns and farms. They have many colonists, and they don't have an organized program of evangelism, okay? So that's something that we'll note about the English. And with that, y'all want to do a multiple choice set with me? Let me think about it. Y'all want to do a multiple choice set? Let's see if y'all are up for that, okay? So let's see. Y'all go ahead and let us know in the chat if y'all want a multiple choice set together. Okay, so we're going to go here, and we are going to get this going here, all right? So let me go ahead, and unless y'all just tell me we don't want to do that, Richie, we don't want to do your stupid multiple choice set. All right, so let's take a look here. And yes, okay, so here is an example. This is a multiple choice set that I wrote, and actually, it would be better for me probably from what we've seen to share my screen here. Let's see, rather than putting it on there. Let's see. All right, yes, give me just 1 second. Okay, so exams, all right. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the questions, and then as we look at the questions, I'm going to give y'all a chance to answer a poll, okay? And so this is a 3-question set. Let me look at the chat and make sure that this is something that y'all are wanting to do. You're okay. Okay. Natalie is down. Okay, Raul is good with this. So as far as that, okay, I see a lot of yeses, not a lot of nos. We got a few shout outs here. Shout out to Miss Majors class, Miss Fuller, Mr. Majors, I'm sorry. Okay, so Mr. Majors and Miss Fuller and Saint Hilar's class. All right, excellent. So let's go ahead and share it. And we'll go ahead and we will be pushing some polls out, okay? So as far as that, we'll be pushing some polls out in a little bit, okay? Because we're going to see how we do. Now, Remember that when you're doing multiple choice, look for answers that are out of period, irrelevant, or wrong, okay? And from there, remember, typically 2 answers can be eliminated pretty easily, and then we have to decide between the last 2. So Miss LaPlante, all right, we got Miss LaPlante representing over here, ladies and gentlemen. So what I've got here is this is a visual source. Now, don't try to get every detail. And remember that the question is not about the stimulus. The question is about integrating your knowledge of U.S. history into this. So this picture by itself isn't going to help you answer the questions if you don't know anything about U.S. history. So 1609, I see the defeat of the Iroquois on Lake Champlain, drawing by Samuel de Champlain, 1609. Now, Samuel de Champlain, that sounds French. Now, I probably recognize him if I'm going to make a, heading toward making a 5 or something. But I don't need to recognize him to pass the exam, but it looks kind of French. All right, give this a 5-second look. If that's not enough, give it another 5 seconds. But don't try to study every detail. Just kind of take a look what in general is going on. Okay, so let's see. Let's just take a close look here. What in general is going on? So going from there, let's go ahead and note here which of the following led most directly to the historical situation depicted on the image. A, French reliance on American fur trading partners for access to furs. B, competition between France and Spain for territory in the Southwest. C, French efforts to spread their cultural ideas among American Indians. And D, American Indian resistance to subjugation by French colonial authorities. Going once, going twice. All right, we're going to get that poll going, and let's see what y'all did for question 1. Okay, going to make that poll visible, and let's, oops. Okay, question 1. Okay, excellent. All right, so looks like we got some votes coming in. All right, we got over 200 here on Crowdcast. Now, remember, if you're on YouTube and you want to join us on Crowdcast, there is a link in the video description. Okay, Alexia on YouTube, New Amsterdam for real. All right, so with that, but just note that if you are on YouTube, just make sure that you are welcome to join us on Crowdcast if you want to participate in the polls. All right, so let's see what we're going to do here. And the results are revealing to you, and it looks like we actually, let's see. All right, and this is one of those, I tell you, it's a tough one. Now, it's easy for y'all to eliminate 2 of the incorrect answers, but actually more of you than not are not, and again, you're thinking about preconceived notions rather than your knowledge of specifically French colonization. Okay, so let's look at what's going on here. We've got almost 70% of you pick D, and then we've got almost 20% of you picking A. So let me show you why A is right and D is wrong, okay? Because what you're doing if you picked D is you are confusing the French with the Spanish or the English, okay? The French are not subjugating American Indians. The French are trading. Now, note here, French reliance on American Indian trading partners for access to furs. So basically, we see here the question. Now, note here, it's not Indians. The Indians are not fighting the Europeans here. Now, again, the stimulus is not going to help you if you don't know, what's behind it. So again, they're testing your knowledge of French colonization of the Americas. So what you want to understand here, all of the French are on the same side. And so they are helping their Indian allies against their enemies, the Iroquois. And so we see here, what did the test makers want to make sure you knew? That the French traded, that French needed access to furs. So B and C, most of y'all were able to eliminate. Typically, 2 of them are going to be easy to eliminate, but remember that this is about the French. Now, with that, so don't confuse the French with the Spanish, and don't look at all the time Europeans are constantly subjugating Native Americans. That is a very, oversimplified and unnuanced story, because the French, often had very friendly relations with the natives. Now, question 2. This is a comparison question. So what this is going to require you to do is to be able to compare the French with other colonists, all right, with other colonizers. So let's note here that in order for one of these to be correct, it's going to have to be correct for both, for the French and for the other colonizer. So which of these colonial practices was most similar? That gives us a comparison angle, most similar. So we're looking at comparing to those of French colonists in North America. Now remember, to be correct, it has to be correct for both. A, the prevalence of intermarriage between English colonists and American Indians. B, Spanish attempts to incorporate American Indians as subjects of their empire. C, the arrival of large numbers of English colonists who intended to grow cash crops. And D, efforts by Dutch colonists to build strategic alliances with American Indian neighbors. Going once, going twice. All right, let's get that poll ready. Okay, so we're going to go to question 2. All right, and that's up. Excellent. Question 2 is up, and we'll go ahead and put away question 1. Let's see. All right. Okay, let's see. So question 2, let's see what we've got here. All right, looks like here most of y'all are getting the correct answer. Now, again, 2 of the incorrect answers, one thing that we'll see as your results are revealed here. Oh, let me make sure I got to make sure that's visible so y'all can keep voting. Let's see. All right, so as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen there. All right, so going from there, we see that the 2 least popular answers are only taking up about 7%. Okay, so 82% right now are getting the correct answer, followed by about 11% who are going for the next answer. Okay, so again, we typically are in situations where 2 of them are very, very easy to, very easy to eliminate, and we are deciding between the other 2. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and go back to our question set. And y'all having a good time? Let us know in the chat. All right, so going from there, let's go ahead and see here by 1754. Now, again, what we want to note here is some questions will refer to the image, other questions will not, okay? And then some questions will refer to the image, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need the image. So keep that, or the stimulus, keep that in mind. So 3, by 1754, which of the following was most true? Now note here, most true, that which one's the best answer. So there could be another, another something or other, but at the same time, we want to note most true, okay, by 1754. Now, again, usually when they mention a date, like a year, this is something that you probably should know. This is one of those defining years. It is a major kind of, major kind of turning point here. So, but when we see that, we should kind of know. There are some, you don't have to know every year, but there are certain years that it's not a bad idea for, 1607, Jamestown, that sort of thing. So, A, Europeans had ceased to involve themselves in conflicts between American Indians. B, American Indians had become increasingly accepting of British colonial expansion. C, Europeans had shared their weapons technologies with their American Indian allies. Or D, American Indian tribes had set aside their differences to unite against European colonizers. Okay, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, going once, going twice, And let's go ahead and see. Again, make sure that you are eliminating the easiest ones to remember and carefully considering the remaining choices, okay? Because these can be confusing, but it's which one of these is most true, okay? So we're going to go ahead and get the poll started. We've got question 3 already up. Excellent. Okay. So let's go ahead and see. Now, what I notice here is once again the same kind of thing that we're used to seeing. Two of the incorrect answers are getting less than 10% between them. The most popular incorrect answer about 15%, and then about 3/4 of you actually getting the correct answer. Okay, so that's I think that by this time I've kind of got y'all. Y'all aren't falling for the tricks quite as much here. Okay, and so as far as that goes, I think we've got over 100 votes now. So I think we're going to go ahead and we'll keep the poll open if y'all want to keep going. But again, I need to go ahead and keep this thing going. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and note here, A and B were eliminated by nearly everyone. Now, C, Europeans had shared their weapons technologies with their American Indian allies. What we see here, this is 1609. The French were relatively new. We see that the French, they have firearms. There's another F word. How about that? So the French have firearms. Now, the Indians have furs. We can see those furs over there. We can see those pelts. I think they're kind of being stretched out there. If I'm looking at that correctly, unless those are hammocks, I don't know, but it looks like beaver pelts to me. But with that, when we think about that 1609, by 1754, the French want furs. The Indians want firearms. They're going to trade with each other. Okay, so with that, we want to make sure, Europeans had shared their weapons technologies. Now, with D, what we have to avoid here is there's never a time when all American Indians united and went against all of the European colonizers. So note here, 1754, okay? That is the year that the French and Indian War started, known globally as the 7 Years' War, but also the French and Indian War is typically the way that we refer to it colloquially. And why do we refer to it that way? Because it's from the British perspective. From the British perspective, the enemy was the French and the Indians, okay? So, because the Indians were fighting alongside the French. So on one side, it was the British and their very limited list of Indian allies, and then the French and their very long list of American Indian allies. So that's something that's important. But I think in the course and exam description, it's very important that we understand that, that there was at times cooperation between European colonists and American Indians. Okay, that's something that is a very key understanding, that we want to understand that sometimes there was cooperation. Now, again, sometimes there was conflict. Okay, now let me go ahead and pull something up as well while we're on this subject. Let's see. So I've got something here, and y'all can feel free. This is an unfinished kind of thing here. I'm just putting it on the screen. Y'all feel free to take a picture, a screenshot, whatever, because I don't have it up anywhere because it's unfinished, but that's what I do during these lives. I show you things that are partially finished, and that's okay. So with that, let's go ahead and take a little look here. These are 2 events that are specifically mentioned in the course and exam description. So you've got the Pueblo Revolt on one hand and King Philip's War on the other. Now, both of these are examples of American Indian resistance to European colonization during the colonial period. So we want to understand that that's the case. Now, they both involved coalition building. And then also we want to note, not all area natives joined the uprising. So, in the case of the Pueblo Revolt, some of the tribes, especially in southern New Mexico, didn't participate. In King Philip's War, again, there are Indians that are allied with King Philip, but then King Philip and his tribe, they've got their own enemies among the New England natives who then allied themselves with the British. So note here that, you do have coalition building, but still not a complete coalition because, Europeans had their animosities with each other and American Indians had their animosities. So the Pueblo Revolt happened in New Mexico in August of 1680. And then this is rooted in resistance to Spanish attempts to eradicate indigenous religions. Okay, so basically the Spanish came in, they said, you're going to be Catholic now. Okay, and you're not only going to be Catholic, but you're going to stop your indigenous folk religion practices. And that was something that they weren't willing to do. So they rose up against the Spanish, and that was a native victory. The Spanish abandoned New Mexico for 12 years. Now, later, the Spanish came back and reconquered it, but we do want to note that the Spanish, when they reconquered it, they were a little bit more chill. And we see things today, such as in Mexican culture, the Day of the Dead, right? When you think about the Day of the Dead, this is on the Catholic All Saints Day, but this is also combining indigenous traditions with Catholicism. And so, with that, King Philip's War was in New England for about 3 years, and this was resistance to English colonial expansion. In my lectures on the European colonizers, I mentioned George S. Patton, General Patton, who said, "Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way." Now, the English get out of my way. They've got a farm and they think, okay, well, you can go, hunt and gather anywhere, is their perspective. Now, the New England Indians, they've had enough. They have been pushed off their land enough. They rise up and go into that. So going into here, it's a colonial victory. So this is an English colonial victory, and it permanently weakens the native tribes of New England. Okay. So as far as that goes, and again, feel free to take a picture of this. Just note that this is something that you are going to need to know for this exam. Okay, so that's going to be something that's going to be important because it's mentioned in the quote unquote blue boxes on the CED. All right, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, shout out Mr. Howard though. All right, and we're all wondering what AP classes Vanessa is taking next year. All right, so with that, let me go ahead and shout out to some folks here. Ivan the Terriblest, Harris Abbey, Valen _029, V7.Nessa, N1, all right, with a period there. Marcus Carey. All right, so we got a few people here. Let's see as far as if we've got any other folks. Now, remember Instagram shout outs. I am at Tom Richey on Instagram. Okay, so that's feel free to to follow me there on Instagram, and I will be doing some more shout outs before this broadcast concludes. So with that, of course, you've also got to compare the 13 colonies. Let me see if we've got anything about the 13 colonies. All right, so nobody's really asking about that. Now, actually, there is one here. Okay, so we see here. All right, excellent. So, we've got a teacher question. A lot of times, it's so funny when I see I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. You see a teacher ask that. So Raul asked this question: how did environmental factors lead to differences? So one thing that we'll note here is, first of all, the New England colonies are the only colonies that, as far as the British, I'm on the 13 colonies now. The New England colonies are the only colonies that are not basing their economy primarily on surplus agriculture, basically agriculture for food, like the staple crops in the middle colonies, or the cash crops in the southern colonies. In the New England colonies, they can do subsistence farming, which is they can grow food for themselves, but they can't export. And when we think about the environmental factors, oftentimes we hear things about the rocky soil. About the short growing season. Okay, so in the South, we've got agriculture here all over the place. We've got a long growing season. We get a lot of rain. We've got very, very fertile soil. So that's something that, in the South, you see that, for example, tobacco cultivation is something that happens in the Chesapeake colonies. Now, let's make sure that we know this. Chesapeake colonies, which of course I'm going to be in the Chesapeake area on Saturday. Remember, that's going to be at Bayside High School in Virginia Beach. Saturday from 1 to 4, I will be doing a live review, and that's in the Chesapeake area. Now, the Chesapeake colonies, the Chesapeake Bay is along the area of Virginia and Maryland. So when you look at those colonies, that is where tobacco cultivation is happening the most. Now, that'll kind of go into North Carolina as well, but this is, when we think about the Chesapeake colonies, Virginia and Maryland. And that is, when we think about environmental factors, this is the best place to grow tobacco. And so this tobacco cash crop agriculture is going to result there. So we do definitely have some environmental factors. Also, when you look at Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, these middle colonies are are basically very good for growing the staple crops, the wheat, the corn, growing crops for food. That the middle colonies are typically known as the breadbasket. And that's why when you think about like Quaker oats, now no literal connection to the Quakers, but Quaker oats, that's, they name it after a Quaker, Pennsylvania. That's where they grew, oats and all that. Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, Romulus APUSH review is available at the App Store and Google Play. A handy little trivia app, always good to, to have with you. Now, with that, I need to see, my cell phone carrier has been having some issues here, and it could be that, I'm trying to put my phone in airplane mode and all of this other stuff, and it's not doing so well. But we do have Samuel Birdsong and Musai 28. Thank you for the recent follows there. And I'll be, sometimes I announce things on Instagram and that sort of thing. So with that, we've got that question there. And then let's go ahead and take a look here. Now, can I explain the Great Awakening? Okay, so the first Great Awakening, ladies and gentlemen, this is a religious revival. Okay, now I'll give you an old handout that I made. First Great Awakening, need to know. If you Google First Great Awakening, need to know, you will find this handout. I will also put it in the chat. Okay, we'll also put that in the chat. And so with that, let's go ahead and get this out here. Let's see, shout out to Miss Goatford. All right, and Miss Steele. Okay, the First Great Awakening. Thanks, Nico. All right. Yes, let's see. Shout out to Mrs. McWilliams. Okay, got it. All right, so with that, that is a link to the First Great Awakening, need to know. Shout out to Coach Oglesby, Mr. Featherman. All right, Coach Oglesby, Coach O. All right, got it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so let's go ahead. I put that in the chat, and we'll go ahead and share this need to know handout. Okay, so basically, what was the First Great Awakening? It was a religious revival. When did it happen? Happened in the late colonial period. Now, we don't always need a precise date all the time. Like, not everything has to be a particular year or a particular date or something like this, okay? But in this case, I would note 1730s and 1740s, okay? That's what's happening here, the 1730s, the 1740s. And so a lot of times, as long as you can kind of tell around when something happened, that's fine. It's kind of like in math, when you do rounding, right? When you do rounding, you don't have to know the exact number, but about. Now, where did it happen? The entire English-speaking world, okay? This was not confined to a section of the colonies. It wasn't even confined to the colonies themselves. This is an example of something that's going on in Britain and the 13 colonies at the same time. And you got Jonathan Edwards in New England, who preached that sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Now, also George Whitefield, or Whitefield, whatever you want to call him, it's a written test. But George Whitefield was a British preacher who basically, he made 7 Atlantic voyages, went back and forth from the colonies to Britain 7 times preaching revival. And so one thing we'll want to note about the First Great Awakening, hellfire and brimstone preaching, very emotional. You're all going to hell. Okay, that kind of thing here. That is the preaching of really the First and Second Great Awakening. That's what they largely have in common, is that you have this, this very emotional fire and brimstone preaching. Thank you. Melk is okay. I'm glad that Melk is okay for the Instagram follow at Tom Richey. Thank you so much. And so going from there, itinerant preachers, that they tended to be traveling preachers, in a lot of cases not having a lot of education. Now, Jonathan Edwards would be an exception here. Jonathan Edwards was Yale educated, but in a lot of cases, these new light preachers of the First Great Awakening, a lot of times they did not have a university education. There's something of an anti-intellectual current that kind of ran through here. So also just note it created division. Speaking of that, the old lights and the new lights. The old lights who were more established types who liked their conventional religion. But then here where we see the new lights, these are people who like the preaching of the First Great Awakening. Now, consequence, an increase in religious fervor in the colonies. Now, one thing we want to note here is there is a rise in non-traditional denominations. Okay, when we think about Baptist and Methodist, there is a rise in non-traditional denominations. And then a decline in established denominations such as the Anglican Church. Now, there's a concurrent movement here, the Enlightenment. Now, by concurrent, I mean it's happening at the same time. So one thing to note here is today, someone is not both a Democrat and a Republican, okay? Typically, if they identify it with a party, they identify with one of them. And so the Enlightenment is in a lot of cases somewhat of the opposite of the First Great Awakening because it's focused on rationality. While the First Great Awakening is focused on, on the emotional preaching, the religion of the heart, if you will, the Enlightenment is focused on your rational mind and about subduing emotions. So Jefferson, Franklin, and Paine. Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine. Now, I'll note here that I've got the Enlightenment. I've got a video on the American Enlightenment. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you will see that there is a video lecture on the American Enlightenment, including deism. But basically understand that this is a different form of thinking. Okay. Now, another thing that we'll note here when we're thinking about the First and Second Great Awakening is one is late colonial. The other one is, of course, in the antebellum period. The Second Great Awakening is much more associated with reform movements, with spurring antebellum reform movements, whereas we don't see that sort of thing going on so much in the as we go on into the the First Great Awakening, not really that much associated with societal reform and all of that kind of stuff. So with that, we will get into some of these other things as we go on. We've gotten to the point. We've been going on for about an hour. Now, with that, I want to note that I am planning on going live. We do have a session scheduled at the same time next week. Okay, so we will have this scheduled on Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern, same time next week. Now, I don't know if I'll add another session in between, but if I do, y'all will get a notification because y'all have joined the class. Now, what would be a good topic for the next? Well, actually, I might have already picked the topic for the next one. Let me see about that. Did I do that already? I think the next one yes, of course, Mr. Uranaga. I'm always here, always glad to see him here. So with that, let me see, did I create a topic yet? Maybe I did, but I can't really look at that right now, I think, without getting out of here. But as far as that Big West, all right, yes. Are there any topics, though, that y'all want to see me tackle? All right, so yes, history teacher Carson Webster. And also, hey, it's Lily6430. Thanks for the Instagram follow there. So we've got Michael Velasquez, or Miseo Velasquez. Shout out to him. Okay, Antebellum, Cold War. I think that it may be somewhere around there. So at some point we'll do a Cold War emphasis. Y'all would like that kind of thing. FDR, the New Deal. Shout out to Mr. Harris. So with that, okay, I'll consider that. But I think that what we're going to do next time will likely either be the American Revolution and the founding, or the Jeffersonian Republic, antebellum period, that kind of thing. Okay, so interesting. All right, so yeah, I will look at doing some of these things as we go into that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight and remind y'all that it is always a pleasure.